The restaurant buzzed with clinking glasses, polite laughs, and the hum of waiters rushing from table to table. It was Mark's mother's 65th birthday, and everyone was there, his parents, his brothers and their wives, even a couple of cousins. They were seated at a long table near the back of the restaurant, a fancy place with high ceilings and white tablecloth. Mark had made a big deal about reserving it. Jenna sat quietly beside Mark, listening as his family chatted about vacations, promotions, and who bought what car this year. No one asked her anything. They never really did. She was just Mark's wife, the woman who stayed home. That's how they saw her, even though she had stopped being a housewife months ago. The waiter brought out the main courses: steaks, seafood, expensive wine. Everyone was enjoying themselves, forks clinking on plates. Mark had already had 2 glasses of wine, and his voice had grown louder. He always got like this at family gatherings, show-offy, cocky, trying to impress his brothers. Then, without warning, Mark stood up, holding his glass. "I'd like to make a toast," he said, tapping the glass with a spoon. Everyone turned to him. Jenna glanced up, already feeling uneasy. His smirk told her this wasn't going to be kind. "To my lovely wife," he said, voice dripping with sarcasm, "who showed up tonight with no purse, no wallet, and no contribution again. Useless as ever. Cheers." The table erupted in awkward laughter. Some chuckled quietly, others looked down at their plates. Mark's brother grinned. His mother gave a weak smile. Jenna felt her stomach twist, but she didn't react. She just smiled, almost too calmly, and took a sip of water. Not wine. She was staying sharp tonight. Mark sat down, proud of himself. He didn't notice the way she slipped her hand into her bag and felt for the receipt. It was still there, folded neatly, the proof that she had prepaid the entire meal a week ago. She had called the restaurant herself, used her own card, and even arranged the custom birthday cake. He didn't know. No one did. She looked around the table, at the people who laughed along with him, at the way they barely looked at her. She'd sat through dinners like this for years, playing the quiet, supportive wife while Mark made her the punchline. Not tonight. This wasn't just a dinner. It was the start of something. Every insult, every comment, every lie he'd told about her being lazy or useless. She remembered them all. And she'd been planning. Mark raised his glass again, laughing at something his brother said. Jenna smiled once more. She'd let him dig his hole, just a little deeper. Then soon she'd hand him the shovel. Jenna kept smiling. She didn't flinch. She didn't let her eyes show even a flicker of emotion. Not anger, not hurt. Just a polite smile, the kind you wear when you're used to being talked over, laughed at, or ignored. Mark had already moved on, joking with his brother like nothing had happened. His insult hung in the air like a bad smell, but nobody at the table cared. If anything, they thought it was funny. Typical Mark, they probably thought. Always the joker, always teasing. Jenna picked up her fork and slowly pushed a piece of steak around her plate. She wasn't hungry. Her chest felt tight, like someone was pressing down on it. Her face ached from holding the fake smile, but she stayed quiet. Across the table, Mark's mother was talking about her neighbor's daughter, who just got a big job at a tech company. "She's only 27 and already making 6 figures, she said proudly, as if it was her own daughter. Mark's father grunted in approval. "She's not just sitting around at home like some people," someone asked. Jenna didn't know who said it. It didn't matter. It could have been any of them. Jenna's smile stayed, but her fingers clenched under the table. She looked at each of them, people who'd never once asked her what she wanted to do, what she used to be passionate about. Before Mark, before the silence and the smallness he pushed her into. They saw her as a quiet wife who made small talk and refilled wine glasses. No one here knew she used to run a team of 10, that she once pitched projects to CEOs, that she gave it all up when Mark promised they were building a future together, that her job would be keeping the house and someday raising a family. But now, every time he opened his mouth, he made her sound like a leech. She had tried for years to keep the peace. Let the comments slide. Smile through it all. Tell herself it was just Mark being Mark. He had a stressful job. He didn't mean it. But he did mean it. He always had. And his family followed his lead like sheep, never questioning the picture he painted of her. Flashbacks played in her mind like a cruel slideshow. Mark joking about her, napping all day during Thanksgiving. His mom whispering that Jenna wasn't ambitious enough. Mark rolling his eyes when she brought up getting back into work. Each moment was small, easy to ignore on its own. But together, they crushed her. And tonight, something finally cracked. She wouldn't cry. She wouldn't argue. She wouldn't beg for respect anymore. Instead, she made a quiet promise to herself as she looked around the table. This would be the last dinner she ever smiled through. Let them eat. She had already planned her next move. Mark leaned back in his chair, arms stretched out like he owned the room. "Nothing but the best for Mom tonight," he said loudly, holding up his wine glass. "I told the restaurant not to hold back. My treat." His mother beamed at him, clearly impressed. One of his brothers clapped him on the shoulder. "You really went all out, huh?" Mark laughed, proud of himself. Well, what can I say? I take care of my family. Jenna kept her face calm. She sat quietly beside him, dabbing her mouth with a napkin and looking around the table. Dessert plates had been cleared, and the manager had already brought out the custom cake she had ordered herself. No one had thanked her, because no one knew. A waiter passed behind her and gently placed a small leather folder next to her. Inside was the receipt, just as she had requested. She didn't open it. She already knew the total. $1,492.63, including tax, tip, and the custom dessert. She slid it into her purse without looking at Mark. He didn't notice. He was too busy bragging. I mean, I didn't have to pay for everyone, he said with a smirk. But it's not every day Mom turns 65. Jenna glanced at him, but only for a second. Not angry, not sad, just watching, observing. If only he knew. She had called the restaurant a week ago, arranged everything, paid the full amount in advance using her own credit card, her business credit card, because Mark didn't know she had won. He didn't know about the graphic design clients she worked with at night while he watched TV in the living room. Didn't know about the website she built herself, or the steady flow of income she had been stacking away in a secret account. Jenna hadn't said a word, not because she was scared, but because she had learned. When you're planning something big, you move quietly, like a shadow. Tonight was never about the dinner. It was a test, a stage. And Mark, as always, had played his role perfectly. She had the receipt. She had the documentation. And soon she'd have the last word. As the family gathered around for group photos and leftover cake, Jenna stood slightly apart, smiling, waiting. Her purse was zipped closed, and inside it sat more than just a piece of paper. It held proof of her power, of the lie he was living. Mark walked past her and patted her shoulder like a trophy. You enjoying yourself? He asked, like nothing had happened earlier. She nodded. More than you know. He laughed and kept walking. He had no idea what was coming. It hadn't always been like this. When Jenna and Mark first got married, she had a full-time job at a marketing agency. She loved it. Late nights brainstorming, leading client pitches, watching campaigns come to life. She was good at it, and she knew it. But Mark started making little comments. Do you really need to work this much? Wouldn't it be nice to have dinner ready when I get home? You know, my mom never had to work. She took care of the home. At first, Jenna brushed it off. But the comments kept coming. Slowly, they turned into guilt trips. Fights. Worn-out arguments about priorities and real family values. When they talked about kids someday, Mark insisted she'd need to be home full-time. What's the point of paying someone else to raise our children? He asked. So she quit. At first, Jenna thought maybe it would be a break. A fresh start. She could rest, maybe freelance a little, and still feel productive. But Mark didn't want her to freelance. He wanted her focused on the house. The laundry. The cooking. When she tried to take on a remote project, he scoffed. Are you seriously doing this for $200? We don't need your little side gigs. Just let me handle the money. And that's when the real control started. He took over their bank accounts. Put her on a monthly allowance, his words, not hers. If she needed something extra, she had to check with him first. At family dinners, he told people she liked staying home, that she wasn't built for the stress of a real job. He said it like a joke, but everyone believed it. And Jenna? She smiled, nodded, bit her tongue, but she never stopped thinking. One night, after Mark had fallen asleep on the couch, she opened her old laptop. It still worked. She updated her resume. She found a freelance site and made a profile. Just to see. Just to test. She got her first job 2 days later. A logo design for a bakery in Oregon. Then another. And another. It was slow at first, but it grew. She built a small studio space in the guest room. Told Mark it was for organizing craft supplies. She started waking up before him. Staying up later. Saving every dollar in a separate account. She bought a new laptop. Took online courses. Built a brand. And now, 2 years later, she was making more than she had in her old job. More than he made some months. Mark had no idea. He still saw her as a housewife in sweatpants who cleaned the bathroom and baked birthday cupcakes. He didn't know about the dozens of invoices with her name on them. The contracts. The repeat clients. She let him think what he wanted. Let him brag about being the breadwinner. Because soon, he was going to find out exactly who he was married to. The restaurant was winding down, but their table was still buzzing with loud chatter and laughter. Plates had been cleared, wine glasses refilled, and the cake was almost gone. Mark was louder than ever, clearly proud of himself. Jenna sat quietly, watching everyone. She had barely touched her slice of cake. Her purse sat on her lap, unzipped just slightly. When the waiter came by to refill water, Jenna gave him a small folded note along with a rolled-up bill. He took it without a word, gave a polite nod, and walked away. She didn't need much. Just a moment. A sentence. One truth, said loud enough for everyone to hear. A few minutes later, the manager approached their table. He was a tall man in a dark suit, polite smile on his face. He looked directly at Jenna. "Excuse me," he said, voice clear and confident. "I just wanted to personally thank Ms. Jenna for arranging and covering tonight's dinner. It was a pleasure working with you this past week. We hope your family enjoyed everything." Silence. The whole table froze. Mark stopped mid-sentence, his mouth slightly open. His mother blinked, confused. Mark's brother looked from Jenna to Mark, waiting for someone to explain. Jenna didn't move. She calmly set her fork down and looked up at the manager. "Thank you," she said, her voice light and even. Everything was perfect. The manager smiled again, nodded, and walked away. Now the whispers started. "Wait, you paid?" Mark's mom asked, squinting. "But Mark said," someone else mumbled. "I thought Mark paid for all of it." Jenna didn't rush to explain. She just reached for her water and took a slow sip. Mark laughed nervously, rubbing the back of his neck. "Oh, yeah, well, technically, yeah, Jenna helped. We share things. She's just being sweet." His face was red now. "She arranged everything?" his mother asked, sounding surprised. "She paid in advance," the cousin added, piecing it together. "That's what the manager said." Mark was scrambling. "We're married, it's all the same money anyway," he said quickly. "You know how it is." Jenna gave him a small smile. "Actually, it's not the same money. I used mine." Now the silence was heavier. Someone at the end of the table chuckled under their breath. Jenna glanced around. She didn't need to say anything else. The point had landed. Mark sat stiffly, no longer smiling. Jenna leaned back in her chair and folded her hands in her lap. She didn't gloat. She didn't explain. She just let them all sit in it. Let them wonder how much they didn't know. It was only the beginning. Mark let out a forced laugh, trying to brush off the moment like it was nothing. "Yeah, it was a surprise," he said, waving his hand. "Jenna's full of surprises tonight." He looked around the table, hoping someone would back him up. "She told me she wanted to keep it a secret, right, babe?" Jenna tilted her head, pretending to think. She said softly, then smiled. "Something like that." His brother raised an eyebrow. "Wait, so you didn't pay?" Mark cleared his throat. "We both paid, kind of. Same account, you know? Married life." But Jenna just sipped her water again, calm as ever. She hadn't once raised her voice or looked angry. She didn't need to. The silence around the table said enough. Mark's mother leaned in, whispering to her husband, who gave her a small shrug. His cousin looked down at her phone like she suddenly felt awkward being there. One of the wives asked, "So, Jenna, when did you plan all this?" Jenna smiled. "Last week. I worked it out with the manager over the phone. The cake was custom too. I sent in the design myself." "You designed it?" someone asked. "I did," she nodded. "Part of what I do now." Mark stiffened beside her. He hadn't even looked at the cake long enough to notice the little detail. He'd been too busy talking about himself. His mother leaned across the table. "I thought you weren't working." Mark said. "I started freelancing last year," Jenna said casually, cutting her slice of cake with her "It's been going well." "Wow," said Mark's brother, clearly amused. "Guess you don't need Mark's wallet after all." A few people laughed quietly. Mark didn't. He looked around the table and tried to redirect the conversation, talking about the wine or someone's vacation photos. But no one was really listening. They were watching, thinking, wondering. Jenna caught his mother staring at her with a strange look, like she was trying to connect the dots. Mark looked uncomfortable now. His charm wasn't working like it used to. Jenna stayed polite through it all. When someone asked how long she'd been working again, she smiled and said, "Oh, just long enough to handle dinners like this without help." Mark's cousin covered her mouth, hiding a grin. Every soft answer Jenna gave worked like a quiet little crack in Mark's image. He wasn't the generous husband. He wasn't the provider. He wasn't the leader he liked to think he was. And everyone was starting to see it. Jenna sat back and watched the cracks spread. She didn't need to push. The truth had already started working on its own. The dinner was over. People were gathering their coats, saying goodbye, and hugging Mark's mother one by one. Jenna stood near the exit, holding her purse and smiling politely as she waited. Mark was still talking to his brother, trying to make jokes and act normal, but the energy at the table had shifted. Everyone could feel it. Then, quietly, Mark's mother walked over to Jenna. "Can I talk to you for a moment, dear?" she asked softly. Jenna nodded. "Of course." They stepped aside, near the window, away from the others. The restaurant was quieter now. Most of the other tables had cleared out. Mark's mother looked at her carefully. Her voice was gentle, but her eyes searched Jenna's face. "I just wanted to ask, are you okay?" she said. "You seemed different tonight." Jenna kept her expression calm. She nodded. "I'm okay. Thank you for asking. You surprised us," his mom continued. "The dinner, the cake, paying for all of it. That was very generous." Jenna gave a small smile. "It was important to me. Your birthday means something. I wanted it to be special." His mom hesitated. "I just didn't know you were working again. Mark always said you weren't interested in going back to that world." Jenna looked down, then back up. Well, sometimes people say things that aren't exactly true. I never stopped wanting to work. I just stopped saying it out loud. There was a long pause. His mom looked surprised, but she didn't interrupt. I've been freelancing for a while now, Jenna continued, voice still soft. It's been nice, having something of my own again. Something I didn't have to ask permission for. The words hung in the air. His mother's lips pressed into a thin line. Jenna, has Mark been? Has he made you feel like you can't speak up? Jenna didn't answer right away. She looked at her gently. I think Mark likes things to be a certain way. And sometimes that way doesn't leave room for anyone else's voice. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was enough. His mother's face changed. A quiet understanding settled in. I didn't know, she said quietly. He always told us you were just tired. That you preferred staying home. That you didn't really want to work. Jenna met her eyes. That's what he wanted everyone to believe. The older woman looked down at her hands, then back at Jenna. You're not what I thought. Jenna gave a gentle nod. People usually figure that out, eventually. Mark's mother didn't say anything for a moment, but Jenna could see it. The doubt. The slow unraveling of the story she'd been told for years. She reached out and touched Jenna's arm lightly. Thank you for tonight. Jenna smiled. You're welcome. And for the first time, it felt real. The second they walked through the front door, Mark slammed it shut behind them. What the hell was that? He snapped, tossing his keys on the table so hard they bounced onto the floor. Jenna calmly hung up her coat, saying nothing. Mark followed her into the living room, voice rising. You embarrassed me in front of my entire family. You made me look like a fool. She turned slowly to face him. I didn't say anything untrue. That's not the point, he shouted. You did it on purpose. You set me up. You wanted them to see me like that. Jenna crossed her arms. I didn't plan what the manager said. I just paid for the dinner. Quietly. You're the one who decided to turn it into a performance. Mark's face turned red. You emasculated me. In front of everyone. They're probably laughing at me right now. She tilted her head. Why does it feel like you care more about your image than the fact you've been lying about me for years? He stared at her, chest rising and falling fast. You've been sneaking around, working behind my back, making money without telling me. What else have you been hiding, huh? What else don't I know? Jenna took a slow breath, then reached into her bag. She pulled out a small folder and tossed it onto the coffee table. What's that? He barked. Proof, she said calmly. Invoices. Tax forms. Bank statements. Everything I've earned in the past year and a half. He flipped through the papers, his eyes growing wider with each page. This is thousands of dollars. Jenna sat down across from him. Yes. And I saved every cent. Because I knew this day was coming. You went behind my back, he said again, voice quieter now but no less angry. You lied to me. No, she said, her voice steady. I protected myself. You cut me off from our finances, told your family I was lazy, acted like I was nothing but your dependent. I didn't lie. I just stopped including you in things that were never really your business to begin with. He dropped the folder and stood up, pacing. You've been planning this? What? Is this some kind of revenge? Jenna stood too, locking eyes with him. No. This is called taking back control. He didn't know what to say. His mouth opened, then closed again. He looked smaller somehow, like the loud, arrogant version of him had drained out on the floor. I have every receipt, Jenna said. Every email. Every comment you made. I've kept records. Because I didn't feel safe trusting your version of the truth anymore. Mark stared at her like he didn't recognize her. And maybe he didn't. Because the woman standing in front of him wasn't the quiet wife he used to talk over. She was someone who wasn't afraid of him anymore. The next morning, the house was quiet. Jenna moved through it calmly, packing only what mattered. Her laptop, documents, clothes, and a few personal things. She didn't rush. Everything was already planned. Mark was still asleep on the couch, where he'd passed out after their argument. She glanced at him once, but felt nothing. No sadness. No fear. Just a quiet kind of peace. She zipped her suitcase and placed it by the front door. Then she walked over to the dining table and laid out a single envelope. Inside was a copy of the letter her lawyer had sent last week, a clear breakdown of everything she was legally entitled to in the divorce. Yes, divorce. She'd spoken to the lawyer a month ago, explained everything, showed the documents, shared the recordings, the receipts, the emails. They had drawn up the paperwork carefully. Everything was ready. She had waited until after the dinner because she wanted him to show his true self one last time, with an audience. And he had. The moment Mark woke up, groggy and confused, Jenna was already dressed and holding her keys. What's going on? He asked, blinking at her. I'm leaving, she said. Check the table. He sat up quickly. What do you mean, you're leaving? She didn't answer right away. She let him walk over and open the envelope. As his eyes scanned the first page, his expression changed. Wait, hold on, Jenna, let's talk about this, he said, suddenly panicked. This is crazy. You're overreacting. Last night was just a fight. She shook her head. No, Mark. Last night was the truth. Everything else before that was the lie. You can't just throw away our marriage, he shouted. I'm not throwing anything away, she said. I'm walking away from what already broke. He moved closer, trying to take her hand, but she stepped back. You said you loved me, he said, almost whispering now. We can fix this. Jenna's voice was calm. Love isn't supposed to feel like silence, or control, or humiliation in front of your family. Mark stared at her, completely lost. So that's it? You're just gone. She nodded. I've got a new place already. And before you try anything, my lawyer has everything on file. I'm not walking away with nothing. She opened the door and wheeled her suitcase outside. Jenna, he called after her. Please, don't do this. She paused at the bottom of the steps and looked back one last time. I already did. Then she turned and walked away, without another word. 3 weeks later, Jenna sat in her new apartment, sunlight pouring through the windows. It wasn't huge, but it was hers. Clean, quiet, and peaceful. Her workspace sat neatly by the window, laptop open, coffee steaming beside it, a few client emails waiting in her inbox. She was booked out for the next month with project. Money was coming in regularly. She didn't have to ask anyone for anything. She was free. Outside, the world kept moving. But inside this little space, Jenna felt calm in a way she hadn't. No more walking on eggshells. No more fake smiles at family dinners. No more silence. She clicked open a browser tab. A Reddit post had just hit the front page. My husband called me useless at a family dinner. He didn't know I paid for the entire meal. Jenna scrolled through the comments, watching as strangers from all over the world cheered her on. Some called her a legend. Others shared similar stories. A few even asked for updates. She didn't use her real name. No photos. Just the story. But she didn't need the credit. The satisfaction was enough. Back at Mark's house, his house now, things weren't so quiet. His mother had called twice to ask why Jenna had really left. His brothers kept making jokes he didn't find funny. One cousin had texted him, "So, you got dumped by the woman who actually ran your life?" He didn't answer. The house felt cold without her. The living room was messy, the fridge half empty. The silence was different now. Not peaceful, just empty. He tried calling her once. Straight to voicemail. He told his mother it was just a rough patch, and that Jenna would come around. But he didn't believe that anymore. Not after reading the legal papers again. Not after seeing the bank transfers he hadn't known existed. He finally realized he never really saw her. He only saw what he wanted her to be. Quiet, small, easy to control. But she had never been that. Now she was gone. And she'd left with everything she had earned, and everything he thought he owned. Jenna leaned back in her chair, smiling at the screen. She closed the laptop and stood to stretch. Outside her window, people were walking dogs, drinking coffee, laughing on benches. She grabbed her keys and headed out, locking the door behind her. There was a new life waiting, and for once, it felt like every step was hers to choose. Mark's words echoed faintly in her memory. "Here's to my useless wife." She smiled to herself. Guess who's really useless now?
Hi besties, thank you so much for watching to the end. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe.